The first time the little girl disappeared, nobody noticed. Not the neighbors, not the school, not the system built to protect her. But 12 motorcycles did. They came through Hollow Creek at dawn like ghosts made of chrome and diesel smoke. Same route, same engines, same scarred faces under the Montana cold. Every morning at 6:47, she stood on that cracked sidewalk in bare feet, waving with both hands like her life depended on it. Maybe it did. Then one morning, the corner was empty. The engines didn't stop. They circled back. What the Iron Valley Riders found behind that foster home door wasn't just neglect. It was something the law refused to see, and something 12 bikers refused to ignore. If you want to see how far brotherhood goes when a child's life hangs in the balance, stay until the end. Hit that like button, drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from, and let's ride. The town of Hollow Creek, Montana, sat wedged between pine ridges and frost-burned plains like a place the highway forgot. Population 1,847. One main street, 2 gas stations, a diner that closed at 7. The kind of town where everyone knew everyone's business until they didn't want to know anymore. The Iron Valley Riders came through every morning at 6:47 a.m. 12 bikes, no deviation. Harley Softails, a couple of Dynas, one Sportster that backfired on cold starts. They worked the rail yard 15 miles east. Welders, freight handlers, crane operators. Men who showed up before the sun and didn't talk much after. The convoy was ritual, engine noise instead of conversation. Leather against wind instead of explanation. Marcus Hawk Brennan led the pack. 43 years old, scarred knuckles. A limp in his left leg from an IED outside Kandahar that turned 3 men into red mist and left him with a titanium rod and dreams he couldn't shake. His beard was streaked gray. His eyes stayed on the road like he was still scanning for threats that weren't there anymore. He didn't wave, didn't smile, didn't do much of anything except ride and work and sleep when the nightmares let him. But he noticed things. He noticed the girl. She was small, maybe 6 years old, blonde hair tangled in the wind, barefoot most mornings even when frost glittered on the cracked sidewalk outside the foster home on Maple Street. She stood there every single day at 6:47, hands raised, waving with both arms like she was guiding planes out of the sky. No hesitation, no shyness, just desperate, unfiltered hope. The first time Hawk saw her, he didn't wave back. Didn't think much of it. Kids waved at bikes. That was normal. The second time, Polly Rodriguez, riding Sweep, threw her a casual salute. She lit up like someone had handed her the sun. The third time, all 12 riders waved. After that, it became part of the route, a checkpoint. The girl was always there. Same spot, same time, same frantic waving. The riders waved back. No names, no stopping, just acknowledgement. A moment of connection in a world that didn't offer her much. Hawk started watching her more closely. Not in a way that required words, just in the way a man with too many scars learns to read things other people miss. The way she stood too still when the waving stopped. The way her shoulders hunched when the door behind her opened. The way she never wore shoes that fit. The way she watched the bikes disappear like she was losing the only thing tethering her to the surface. "You see that kid every morning?" Polly asked one night over coffee at the rail yard's break room. Polly was 31, stocky, with burns on his forearms from welding sparks and a baby daughter he saw every other weekend. He drank his coffee black and never sat with his back to a door. Hawk nodded. "She always alone?" "Yeah." "Foster home?" "Looks like it." Polly didn't say anything for a while. He stirred his coffee with a stir stick that had already dissolved. "My cousin's kid was in the system for 2 years, came out wrong, didn't talk right, flinched at everything." Hawk set his mug down. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. Somewhere in the yard, a freight horn blasted twice. "You think something's wrong?" "I think kids don't wave like that unless they need to." That stayed with Hawk, planted itself in the part of his brain that never shut off, the part that counted exits and memorized faces and cataloged threats before they materialized. He started paying attention to the house itself, peeling paint, sagging porch, windows with bed sheets tacked up instead of curtains, a yard full of weeds and a rusted swing set with one seat missing. There were other kids. He saw them sometimes. Faces in windows, shadows moving behind glass. But the blonde girl was the only one who came outside, the only one who waved. Then one Thursday morning in late October, she wasn't there. Hawk saw the empty sidewalk at 6:46. His hand tightened on the throttle. He glanced back. Polly had seen it too. So had Ree Carter, riding third, tall, quiet, with a shaved head and a scar that ran from his temple to his jaw. Ree's eyes flicked toward the house, then back to the road. They didn't stop, didn't slow. The convoy kept moving like it always did, but something had shifted. The rhythm was broken. The checkpoint was gone. At the rail yard, Hawk couldn't focus. He welded the same seam 3 times, then burned through the metal and had to start over. His supervisor asked if he was sick. Hawk said no and kept working. But the image stayed with him. The empty sidewalk, the closed door, the absence where presence used to be. Maybe she's just inside, Polly said at lunch. They sat on the loading dock with sandwiches neither of them ate. Could be sick, could be anything. Could be, but you don't think so. Hawk didn't answer. He watched a crow land on a freight container, tilt its head, then fly off. The wind smelled like diesel and rust. She was there every day for 3 months, every single day, same time, same spot. So kids don't just stop. Ree walked up, holding a thermos of coffee that steamed in the cold air. He didn't sit, just stood there, arms crossed, looking out at the rail lines like he was deciding something. We going back? After shift, Hawk said. Polly looked between them. Going back for what? To check. Check what? You gonna knock on the door? Ask if the kid's okay? They'll call the cops on you. Maybe. Hawk, man, you can't just... I'm not leaving it alone. Hawk stood, tossed his sandwich in the trash. You don't have to come, Polly sighed. You know I'm coming. Ree just nodded. At 5:30 p.m., after the shift ended and the yard cleared out, the 3 of them rode back to Maple Street. The sun was already setting, turning the sky the color of rust and smoke. The temperature had dropped. Frost was forming on windshields and fence posts. The house looked worse in the fading light. The porch sagged in the middle. The mailbox was dented. A dog barked somewhere behind the fence, then went quiet. Hawk killed his engine. Polly and Ree followed. The silence after the engines died felt heavy, unnatural, like the street itself was holding its breath. You sure about this? Polly asked. Hawk didn't answer. He walked up the cracked driveway, boots crunching on gravel, and climbed the 3 steps to the porch. The wood creaked under his weight. He knocked. 3 times. Hard enough to be heard, but not aggressive. Nothing. He knocked again. A shadow moved behind the window. Then the door opened a crack. A woman's face appeared. Mid-40s, thin, hair pulled back in a ponytail, eyes that didn't meet his. Can I help you? Yeah, I'm looking for the little girl. Blonde, about 6. She usually stands out front in the mornings. Why? Just want to make sure she's okay. The woman's expression tightened. She's fine. Can I talk to her? No. Why not? Because I said so. Who are you? Just someone who rides by every morning. She waves. We wave back. Haven't seen her in a few days. The woman's jaw set. She's fine. You need to leave. Is she sick? That's none of your business. It is if something's wrong. The door started to close. Hawk put his hand on the frame, not forcing it, just stopping it. The woman's eyes went wide. Get your hand off my door or I'm calling the police. Call them. I'm serious. So am I. Polly stepped up behind Hawk. Ma'am, we're not trying to cause trouble. We just want to know the kid's okay. The woman looked past Hawk at the 2 other bikers standing in the driveway. Her face went pale. You need to leave. Now. Let us see her, Hawk said quietly. 2 minutes. That's all. No. Why not? Because she's not available. What does that mean? The woman's voice cracked. It means she's not here. She's been moved to another home. Now get off my property before I call the sheriff. Hawk stepped back. The door slammed shut. The deadbolt clicked. For a long moment, none of them moved. The wind picked up, rattling the swing set in the yard. The dog barked again. Somewhere down the street, a car door closed. She's lying, Ree said. Yeah. So what do we do? Hawk looked at the house, at the windows with their makeshift curtains, at the shadows behind the glass. We come back tomorrow morning, all of us. The next morning, the convoy came through at 6:47. But this time there were more than 12 bikes. Word had spread. 19 riders rolled down Maple Street in formation, engines low and rumbling like distant thunder. They didn't stop, didn't reverend, just passed by slow enough to be seen, to be counted, to be remembered. The girl still wasn't on the sidewalk, but someone was watching from the window. A small face pressed against the glass. Blonde hair, wide eyes. Hawk saw her, she saw him. Then the curtain dropped. At the rail yard, Hawk made a call. Polly knew a guy who knew a guy, a private investigator who'd worked missing persons cases for the county. His name was Del Carver, retired cop, 62. Walked with a cane and drank too much but still had contacts in the system. They met at the diner that night. Del ordered pie. Hawk ordered coffee he didn't drink. "You're telling me you think this kid's in danger," Del said, cutting into his pie with a fork that looked too small for his hands. "I'm telling you something's wrong." Based on what? A feeling? Based on the fact that she stood outside every single day for 3 months waving at us like we were the only thing keeping her afloat, and now she's gone, and the woman who answered the door lied about it. Del chewed slowly. "You got proof of abuse?" "No." "Proof of neglect?" "No." "Then what do you want me to do?" "Find out if she's still in that house. Find out if she's okay. Find out why they're hiding her." Del set his fork down. He looked at Hawk for a long time. "You know how this works, right? You can't just knock on doors and demand to see kids. That's not how the system operates. The system doesn't operate, that's the problem. Maybe, but it's still the system. You start pushing too hard, they'll shut you out completely. Could make things worse for her. Or we do nothing and she disappears for real." Del sighed. He pulled out a small notebook, flipped it open, clicked a pen. "Give me the address, I'll see what I can dig up. No promises." Hawk gave him everything. The address, the woman's description, the timeline. Del wrote it all down, then closed the notebook and slid it into his jacket pocket. "You really care about this kid?" "I care about not ignoring what's in front of me." "That's a yes." Hawk didn't respond. Del stood, tossed a 20 on the table. "I'll call you in a couple days. Don't do anything stupid in the meantime." But Hawk already knew he was going to. The convoy came back every morning. 23 bikes now, then 26, then 31. Riders from other chapters started showing up. Men who didn't know the girl, but knew what it meant when brothers called. They rode slow, they rode quiet, they rode in formation like a promise that wouldn't break. And every morning the girl's face appeared in the window, just for a moment, just long enough to see. On the 6th day, Del called. "You were right," he said. "Something's wrong." Hawk's grip tightened on the phone. He was standing outside the rail yard, leaning against his bike, the wind biting at his face. "What'd you find?" "The home's licensed for 4 kids. There's 7 living there right now. The state's been notified twice in the past year. Once for overcrowding, once for a broken arm one of the kids showed up to school with. Both times, nothing came of it." "Why?" "Because the system's overloaded and underfunded, and the woman running the place knows how to work the paperwork. She's been doing this for 15 years. Got friends in the department. Knows who to call when inspectors show up." "What about the girl?" Del was quiet for a moment. "Her name's Emma Rose Bennett, 6 years old. Mother's in prison, father's unknown. She's been in the system since she was 3. This is her 4th placement. Is she okay?" "I don't know. I couldn't get close enough to confirm, but I talked to a teacher at the elementary school. Emma hasn't been there in over a week. The home called her in sick. No doctor's note, no follow-up." Hawk's jaw clenched. "She's in that house." "Probably." "So what do we do?" "You don't do anything. You let me file a report with Child Services. They'll send someone out." "When?" "Could be a week, could be 2. "That's too long. Hawk, listen to me. You cannot go vigilante on this. You go storming in there, you'll end up in jail, and the kid'll end up worse off." "Or she ends up dead." Del exhaled slowly. "I know you've seen bad things. I know you don't trust the system, but this is how it has to work." Hawk hung up. That night, the Iron Valley Riders met at the clubhouse, a converted garage on the edge of town with a wood stove, a pool table, and walls covered in patches and photos of men who'd ridden before them. 47 riders showed up. Most of them Hawk had never met. He stood in the center of the room, The stove crackled. The air smelled like smoke and oil and leather. "There's a little girl in a house on Maple Street," Hawk said. His voice was steady, flat, the kind of voice that didn't ask for permission. "Her name's Emma. She's 6 years old. She's been waving at us every morning for 3 months. Now she's gone. Hidden. The state knows about it and won't act. The woman running the home's dirty. The system's broken. And if we do nothing, this kid's going to disappear into a statistic." No one spoke. "I'm not asking you to break the law," Hawk continued. "I'm asking you to stand, to be seen, to let them know someone's watching. We don't go inside, we don't touch anyone. We just show up, every day, all of us, until someone with a badge decides to do their job." Polly stepped forward. "I'm in." Ree nodded. "Me too." One by one, the others followed, voices low, steady, committed. By the time the meeting ended, all 47 had agreed. The next morning, the convoy rolled through Hollow Creek like a storm front made of steel and defiance. 47 motorcycles, engines synchronized, leather vests covered in patches that told stories of roads traveled and battles fought. They didn't block the street, didn't reverend, didn't shout. They just lined up along Maple Street, parked their bikes, and stood. Silent, waiting. The neighbors came out onto their porches. Cars slowed. A sheriff's deputy pulled up, got out, talked to Hawk for 10 minutes, then left without making arrests. The law couldn't touch presence, couldn't touch stillness, couldn't touch men who weren't breaking any rules. At 8 a.m., the front door of the foster home opened. The woman stepped out. Her face was pale. Her hands shook. "What do you want?" she shouted. No one answered. "You can't do this. You can't just stand here." Hawk's voice was quiet, calm. "We're not leaving until someone checks on the kids." "They're fine. Prove it." "I don't have to prove anything to you." "Then prove it to the state." The woman's jaw trembled. She went back inside. The door slammed shut. The riders stayed. At noon, a white van pulled up. Child Services. 2 women got out, clipboards, nervous eyes. They knocked on the door. The woman let them in. 30 minutes later, they came back out. One of them was on her phone. The other was writing notes. They didn't look at the riders. They got back in the van and left. The riders stayed. At 4 p.m., 2 more vans arrived. State investigators, a sheriff's deputy, a woman with a camera. And at 4:47 p.m., the front door opened again. 7 children walked out, small, quiet, blinking in the sunlight like they hadn't seen it in days. The blonde girl was 5th in line, Emma Rose Bennett, barefoot, bruises on her arms, a cut above her left eye that hadn't been treated. She looked at the riders. Hawk knelt, slowly, his bad leg screaming in protest. He didn't say anything, didn't smile, just met her eyes. She didn't wave. She just stared at him like she was memorizing his face. Then a caseworker took her hand and led her toward the van. Hawk stood. His throat was tight. His hands were shaking. Behind him, 46 other men watched in silence as the girl who had waved every morning was driven away to a place they couldn't follow. But the house was empty now. The door was open. And inside, investigators were pulling back curtains and opening closets and documenting everything the system had refused to see. Hawk walked back to his bike. Polly was already there. "Think she'll be okay?" Polly asked. Hawk didn't know. But for the first time in years, he believed someone might actually care enough to find out. The van disappeared around the corner, taillights fading into the dusk like embers going cold. Hawk stood beside his bike, hands hanging loose at his sides, watching the empty street where Emma Rose Bennett had been loaded into state custody 20 minutes ago. The investigators were still inside the house. Flashbulbs lit up the windows every few seconds. A sheriff's deputy stood on the porch, arms crossed, not looking at anyone. 46 other riders sat on their bikes or leaned against parked cars, engines off, waiting. The silence felt fragile, like something had been won but nothing had been solved. Polly walked over. His face was drawn. "We did what we came to do." Hawk didn't answer. "Hawk, we got her out. That's what matters. She's in the system now. Better than where she was." "Is it?" Polly didn't have an answer for that. He pulled out a cigarette, lit it, took a drag. The smoke drifted sideways in the wind. "What do you want, man?" You want to follow the van? You want to storm child services? You can't save everyone. I know. Do you? Hawk turned. His eyes were flat, cold. I know exactly what I can't do. I've been knowing that since Kandahar. Doesn't mean I stopped trying. Polly looked at him for a long moment, then nodded. All right, so what's next? We make sure she doesn't get buried again. How? I don't know yet. Ree walked up, his boots crunching on gravel. He didn't say anything, just stood there, arms crossed, waiting. Behind him, more riders were starting to mount up. The sun had set. The temperature was dropping fast. Frost was already forming on windshields. We heading back? Ree asked. Yeah. The convoy rolled out in formation, engines low and steady, exhaust vapor trailing behind them like ghosts. They didn't ride fast, didn't make noise, just moved through Hollow Creek like they'd been there all along and weren't planning to leave anytime soon. At the clubhouse, the mood was different, heavier. Men stood around the wood stove, warming their hands, not talking much. A few drank beer, most just stared at the fire. The victory felt incomplete. Hollow, like they'd pulled someone out of quicksand only to watch them sink into a different pit. Hawk sat at the bar, a glass of whiskey in front of him he hadn't touched. His leg ached. His hands ached. Everything ached. He could feel the weight of the day settling into his bones like old shrapnel working its way to the surface. Polly slid onto the stool next to him. You gonna drink that? No. Then why'd you pour it? Habit. Polly took the glass, drained it in one swallow, set it down. You know what the problem is with you? What? You think you can fix everything by standing still long enough. Worked today. Did it? That girl's in a van headed to another foster home, another stranger, another set of rules she doesn't understand. You think that's better? Hawk's jaw tightened. I think it's better than getting beaten in a house nobody's watching. Maybe, but she's still alone. She was always alone. Not when she was waving at us. That hit harder than Hawk wanted to admit. He turned the empty glass in his hand, watching the overhead light refract through the residue. What do you want me to say, Polly? I want you to admit you care about this kid more than you're letting on. So what if I do? So it's going to eat you alive if you don't let it go. Then it eats me alive. Polly shook his head. You're a stubborn son of a bitch. Yeah. The door opened. A rider Hawk didn't know walked in, tall, broad-shouldered, with a gray beard and a patch on his vest that read Iron Valley Riders, Kalispell Chapter. His name was Rourke. He'd ridden 4 hours to be there that morning and hadn't said a word the entire time. He walked straight to Hawk. You the one who called this? Yeah. Rourke studied him. His eyes were pale blue, hard. You know what you started? I know we got a kid out of a bad situation. That's not what I asked. Hawk set the glass down. Then say what you mean. Rourke leaned against the bar. You put every chapter on the radar today. 47 riders standing on a residential street for 6 hours. Cops watching. Cameras. Social media. By tomorrow, every news station in the state's going to be talking about bikers intimidating a foster home. We didn't intimidate anyone. Doesn't matter. That's how it'll play. And when it does, every club in Montana is going to feel the heat. Cops will start pulling us over, inspecting bikes, running plates, looking for excuses. So we should have done nothing? I didn't say that. Then what are you saying? Rourke's voice dropped. I'm saying you better be ready for the blowback, because it's coming. Hawk met his eyes. I'm ready. Rourke held his gaze, then nodded slowly. All right, just wanted to make sure you knew the cost. He walked away. The room stayed quiet. Ree stepped over. He's not wrong. I know. So we deal with it. Ree didn't look convinced, but he didn't argue. He just pulled out a pack of gum, offered a piece to Hawk. Hawk declined. Ree shrugged, unwrapped a stick, folded it into his mouth. You ever think about what happens after? After what? After we pull someone out. After the system takes over. You ever wonder if we just traded one nightmare for another? Hawk didn't answer. He'd been wondering that since the van drove away. The next morning, the convoy didn't ride past Maple Street. There was no point. The house was empty. Crime scene tape fluttered in the wind. The windows were dark. The porch was bare, but the routine was broken. The checkpoint was gone. And without it, the mornings felt different, colder, emptier. Hawk rode to work alone. Polly was sick. Ree had an early shift at a different site. The highway stretched out in front of him, flat and gray. And for the first time in months, the ride felt aimless, like he was moving just to move, not because there was anywhere to go. At the rail yard, his supervisor pulled him aside. "You need to take a couple days off." "Why?" "Because you've been distracted. You burned through 3 welds yesterday. That's not like you." "I'm fine." "You're not fine. Take the weekend. Come back Monday." Hawk wanted to argue, but the supervisor's face said the conversation was over. He clocked out early, rode home, sat on his porch with a beer he didn't drink, and watched the sun crawl across the sky. His phone rang. It was Dell. "They arrested the woman," Dell said. "Charged her with child endangerment, neglect, and fraud. She's looking at 5 to 10 if they can make it stick." "Good. The other kids are being placed in emergency foster care. State's doing a full review of every home she's ever run." "What about Emma?" Dell was quiet for a moment. "She's in Missoula. Temporary placement with a family that's been vetted. Should be safe." "Should be?" "As safe as the system gets. I can't make promises, Hawk. You know that." "Can I see her?" "No." "Why not?" "Because you're not family. You're not a caseworker. You're just a guy who rode past her house every morning. The state doesn't care that you saved her. They care about protocol." Hawk's grip tightened on the phone. "So that's it? We pull her out and never see her again?" "That's how it works. You did your job. Now let them do theirs." "Their job got her in that house in the first place." Dell sighed. "I know, but that's the system. You can't fix it by glaring at it." Hawk hung up. That night, he didn't sleep. He sat in his kitchen, lights off, staring at the wall. The images kept cycling through his head. Emma's face in the window, the bruises on her arms, the way she'd looked at him when the caseworker led her away, like she was memorizing him, like she thought he might disappear. At 2 a.m., his phone buzzed. A text from Polly. "You up?" Hawk typed back. "Yeah, need to talk. Meet at the clubhouse." Hawk rode through those empty streets, the cold biting through his jacket. The clubhouse was dark except for a single light over the door. Polly's bike was already there. So was Ree's, and 6 others. Inside, the mood was grim. Polly sat at the bar, nursing a beer. Ree stood by the stove, arms crossed. The others were scattered around the room, faces hard. "What's going on?" Hawk asked. Polly didn't look at him. "Rourke was right. Blowback started." "What kind?" "Kalispell PD pulled over 3 of our guys this afternoon, searched their bikes. Found nothing, but held them for 2 hours. Then Missoula Sheriff's Department started running plates on every rider they see. They're calling it community safety enforcement." Hawk's jaw clenched. "They're targeting us." "Yeah. Because we stood on a street and didn't break any laws? Because we made them look bad? Because we did their job and now they've got questions to answer?" Ree spoke up. "It's not just cops. Social media is going crazy. Half the people are calling us heroes. The other half are calling us a gang. There's a petition going around to ban motorcycle clubs from residential areas. That's not legal. Doesn't matter. It's pressure. And pressure makes politicians move." Hawk looked around the room. "So what do you want to do? Apologize? Back off? Pretend we didn't see what we saw?" No one answered. Polly finally turned. His face was drawn, tired. "I'm not saying we did the wrong thing. I'm saying we need to be smart about what comes next." "What does that mean?" "It means we stop making ourselves targets. We go back to our lives. We ride quiet. We don't give them a reason to come after us." "And Emma?" Polly's voice was quiet. "Emma's not our problem anymore." The room went silent. Hawk's hands curled into fists. "Say that again." "Hawk, say it again." Polly stood. "She's in the system. She's safe. We did what we could. Now we have to protect ourselves." "Protect ourselves from what? From doing the right thing? From getting crushed by cops and politicians who want to make an example out of us?" Hawk stepped closer. "So we just walk away?" "Yes. Leave her in the same system that put her in that house in the first place." "It's not the same. It's exactly the same. Different address, same broken machine." Polly's voice rose. "What do you want, Hawk? You want to adopt her? You want to become a foster parent? You want to fight the state for custody?" You can't. You're a single biker with a record and no family. They'll laugh you out of the building. Then I'll make them listen. You can't make them do anything. You're not God. You're just a man who got lucky one time. Hawk's voice dropped. Cold. Hard. Lucky. Yeah, lucky. That little girl waved at you and you decided to care. But there's 1,000 other kids just like her who don't get that. Who don't get seen. You gonna save all of them too? If I have to. Paulie shook his head. You're gonna get yourself killed or arrested or both. Then that's what happens. And what about the rest of us? What about the club? You think we can keep riding if you drag us into a war with the state? Hawk didn't answer. Ree stepped between them. Both of you need to shut up. Paulie glared at him. Stay out of this. No, you're both acting like idiots. Ree looked at Hawk. You can't save everyone. Paulie's right about that, but he's wrong about walking away. Then what do? We follow up, quietly. We make sure the system's actually doing its job. We don't stage another protest. We don't make noise. We just watch. And if something goes wrong, we act. Hawk studied him. You think that'll work? I think it's the only play we've got that doesn't end with all of us in jail or the club getting torn apart. Paulie exhaled slowly. Fine. We watch. But if the cops come down on us harder, we're done. Agreed? Hawk didn't agree, but he nodded. The meeting broke up. Riders filed out one by one, engines starting in the parking lot, headlights cutting through the dark. Hawk stayed behind. Paulie stayed too. For a long time, neither of them spoke. Finally, Paulie said, I don't want to fight you. Then don't. But I'm not letting you destroy yourself over this. I'm not asking for permission. Paulie looked at him, really looked at him. What happened to you over there? Hawk's throat tightened. What? In Kandahar. What happened that made you like this? Hawk didn't answer. Because this isn't about the girl. Not really. This is about something you couldn't save, something you're still trying to fix. Hawk's voice was barely a whisper. It's always about something you couldn't save. Paulie nodded slowly. Yeah, I guess it is. He left. The door closed. Hawk sat alone in the empty clubhouse, the wood stove crackling, the shadows crawling up the walls. His phone buzzed. A text from Dell. Need to talk. Call me. Hawk dialed. Dell answered on the first ring. We've got a problem. What kind? The family Emma's with, the temporary placement. They're asking for her to be moved. Hawk's blood went cold. Why? They say she's not adjusting, won't eat, won't talk, keeps staring out the window. They think she's traumatized and they're not equipped to handle it. So they're giving up on her. They're asking for a specialized placement, somewhere with trauma counselors, but those homes are full. Wait lists 3 months minimum. So what happens to her? Dell was quiet. Group home, until a spot opens up. No. Hawk, no. You put her in a group home and she disappears. You know that. I know that. Everyone knows that. I don't make the rules. Then who does? People who don't care. Hawk's hand shook. How long do we have? Transfers scheduled for Friday. 3 days. Can you stop it? No, but maybe you can. How? File an intent to foster. Show them you're serious. It won't stop the transfer, but it'll get you on the radar, give you a voice in the placement review. I don't qualify. You won't know unless you try. Hawk hung up. He stared at his phone, at the clubhouse walls, at the patches and photos of men who'd ridden before him and men who'd never come back. He thought about Emma's face in the window, about the way she'd waved every morning like her life depended on it. Maybe it did. He made the call. The next morning, Hawk walked into the Department of Family Services office in Missoula. The building was gray, institutional, smelled like bleach and old coffee. A receptionist looked up, disinterested. I'm here to file an intent to foster. She handed him a clipboard with 15 pages of forms. Fill these out. Bring them back when you're done. Hawk sat in a plastic chair and started writing. Name, address, employment, criminal history. He checked the box for military service, checked the box for disability, left the box for marital status blank. When he was done, he handed the forms back. The receptionist barely glanced at them. Someone will call you in 6 to 8 weeks. I need it faster. Everyone does. There's a specific child, Emma Rose Bennett. She's being moved to a group home on Friday. I want to be considered as a placement. The receptionist's eyes narrowed. Are you family? No. Then you can't request a specific child. Why not? Because that's not how it works. You apply. You get vetted. You get matched. You don't get to pick. Hawk leaned forward. That little girl knows me. She trusts me. Putting her in a group home is going to destroy her. Sir, I understand you're concerned, but don't tell me you understand. You don't. The receptionist's voice went flat. If you continue to raise your voice, I'll have security remove you. Hawk stood. I'll be back. He walked out, got on his bike, rode until the road ran out, and there was nothing but trees and sky and the sound of the engine drowning out everything in his head. That night, he called Dell again. They're stonewalling me. I told you they would. So what now? Dell was quiet. You want the truth? Yeah. The truth is you're not going to win this. The system doesn't care about intentions. It cares about paperwork. And your paperwork's got holes, no spouse, no stable family structure, a military record that includes PTSD. They're going to look at you and see risk, not safety. So I do nothing. Or you accept that you did what you could and you let go. Hawk's voice was raw. I can't. Why not? Because I know what happens when no one's watching. Dell sighed. All right. Then here's what you do. You show up at that group home on Friday. You don't make a scene. You don't threaten anyone. You just be there. Be visible. Let her see you. Let the staff see you. Make it clear you're not going away. Sometimes that's all it takes. You think that'll work? No, but it's all you've got. Friday came. Hawk rode to Missoula alone. The group home was a 2-story building on the edge of town surrounded by chain-link fence and a parking lot full of potholes. He parked across the street, waited. At 10:30 a.m., a white van pulled up. A caseworker got out, opened the side door. Emma Rose Bennett stepped out. She looked smaller than before, thinner. Her hair was clean, but her eyes were empty. She didn't look around, didn't resist, just followed the caseworker toward the building like she'd done it 100 times. Then she saw the bike. She stopped, turned. Her eyes locked on Hawk. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then she raised her hand, slowly, hesitantly, and waved. Hawk's throat closed. He raised his hand, waved back. The caseworker noticed. Her expression hardened. She took Emma's hand, pulled her toward the door. Emma looked back over her shoulder, still waving. The door closed. Hawk sat on his bike, hands gripping the handlebars, staring at the building. He didn't leave. At noon, a security guard came out. You need to move along. I'm on a public street. You're loitering. I'm parked. The guard crossed his arms. If you're not gone in 5 minutes, I'm calling the cops. Hawk didn't move. The cops showed up 10 minutes later, 2 officers, young, professional. One of them approached. Sir, we need you to leave the area. Why? You're making the staff uncomfortable. I'm sitting on my bike. You're watching a facility that houses vulnerable children. That's a problem. I know one of the kids inside. That doesn't give you the right to surveil the building. I'm not surveilling. I'm waiting. For what? Hawk didn't answer. The officer's hand moved to his radio. Sir, if you don't leave voluntarily, I'll have to cite you for trespassing. I'm on a public street, and I'm giving you a lawful order to move along. If you refuse, you'll be arrested. Hawk looked at the building, at the windows, at the door Emma had walked through. He started his engine. The officers watched him ride away. That night, Hawk sat in the clubhouse, alone. The wood stove was cold. The lights were off. His phone rang. It was Ree. Where are you? Clubhouse. Stay there. I'm coming. Ree showed up 20 minutes later. He didn't say anything, just sat down, handed Hawk a beer. They drank in silence. Finally, Ree spoke. You can't fight the whole system. I know. But you're going to try anyway. Yeah. Ree nodded. All right. Then you're not doing it alone. Hawk looked at him. Paulie's not going to back this. Paulie's scared. He's got a daughter. He's got something to lose. You and me, we don't. That's not true. It is, and you know it. Hawk didn't argue. Ree leaned back. So what's the play? I don't know yet. Then figure it out. Because if we're doing this, we're doing it smart. No more standing around waiting for the system to act. We act first. Hawk's phone buzzed. A text from Dell. Emma ran away from the group home. They're looking for her now. Hawk's blood turned to ice. He showed Ree the message. Ree's jaw set. Where would she go? Hawk was already on his feet, heading for the door. The only place she knows someone's watching. Maple Street. You said, Kita, Part 2. Cuộc kịch bản Biker Cinematic này được triển khai với dung lượng mục tiêu 6.000 đến 6.500 từ, bắt đầu trực tiếp từ điểm kết thúc của Part 1. Part 2. Cuộc kịch bản Biker Cinematic này được triển khai với dung lượng mục tiêu 6.000 đến 6.500 từ, bắt đầu trực tiếp từ điểm kết thúc của Part 1. Yêu cầu tập trung hoàn toàn vào cấu trúc mâu thuẫn leo thang, các mâu thuẫn nội bộ giữa nhân vật chính và Biker Brotherhood bắt đầu bùng nổ, sự nghi ngờ tăng cao và những sai lầm trong quá khứ bắt đầu để lại hậu quả. Duy trì giống văn mỹ điện ảnh thô ráp, giàu cảm xúc, không sáo rộng. Hãy kể theo ngôi thứ 3, tập trung vào hơi thở nặng nề, ánh mắt đầy sát khí, sự mệt mỏi rệu rã, tiếng động cơ Harley ngoài trời lạnh, khói thuốc dưới đèn neon và sự im lặng căng thẳng giữa các biker. Hội thoại phải chiếm ưu thế, mang tính đối đầu gầy gật, ngắn, gãy gọn và nhiều subtext. Các biker không được viết như gangster cliché mà phải mang cảm giác dangerous but emotionally safe, silent protectors và wounded veterans. Triển khai chi tiết từng phân cảnh, scene by scene. Tuyệt đối không sử dụng gạch đầu dòng, tiêu đề phụ hay nhắc đến thực thể tôn giáo. Câu chuyện phải liên tục tạo mystery mới, emotional reveal mới, hidden trauma và danger mới để giữ chân người xem. Kết thúc Part 2 bằng một nút thất cực mạnh, The Point of No Return, khiến nhân vật không còn đường lui. Hãy trình bày trực tiếp trong tin nhắn, viết cực kỳ chi tiết từng hành động nhỏ. Nếu đặt giới hạn phản hồi trước khi đủ dung lượng, hãy dừng lại ở một câu rạng rỡ để tôi ra lệnh viết tiếp. Chỉ dần bắt buộc. Đây là một câu chuyện điện ảnh hoàn toàn hư cấu nhằm mục đích giải trí, không dựa trên bất kỳ sự kiện hay nhân vật có thật nào. As, show more 750. Claude responded, Part 2. Part 2. The text from Dell sat on Hawk's screen like a lit fuse. Emma ran away from the group home. They're looking for her now. Hawk was already moving, keys off the bar, jacket off the hook. Through the clubhouse door before Ree had finished reading the message over his shoulder. The cold hit him like a fist. Montana November, 28 degrees and dropping, frost on every surface, the kind of cold that found the gaps in your gear and stayed there. He threw his leg over the Softail and kicked it to life. The engine caught and roared, the sound tearing through the empty parking lot. Ree was right behind him, his own bike growling in the dark. She's going back to Maple Street, Hawk said, his voice flat and certain. Ree didn't question it. He just nodded, visor down. They rode hard. 15 miles from Missoula, back toward Hollow Creek, the highway a black ribbon unspooling under their headlights, pine trees on both sides like dark walls holding the night in place. Hawk pushed the bike faster than he should have. The cold tore at his face, his eyes watering behind the visor, his bad leg aching against the frame from the vibration. He didn't slow down. He kept thinking about what Dell's text didn't say. How long Emma had been gone. Whether she'd been out in the cold the whole time. Whether she'd been wearing shoes. Whether anyone in that group home had noticed before they bothered to call it in. He kept thinking about how she'd raised her hand through the van window at Maple Street and waved like it was the last thing she knew how to do. He pushed the bike harder. Maple Street at midnight looked like the set of something abandoned. The foster home was still taped off. Crime scene tape fluttered across the porch like yellow confetti from a party no one wanted. The windows were dark. The swing set in the yard made a sound in the wind. A low, rhythmic creak, metal on metal, the kind of sound that didn't stop. The streetlight nearest the house was out. The one half a block down threw a pale circle of light on the cracked sidewalk where Emma used to stand every morning. Hawk killed the engine before he reached the street. Ree followed. They coasted the last 100 yards in silence, the tick of cooling metal, the creak of that swing, the wind moving through dead leaves. He scanned the sidewalk, the porch, the side yard. Then he saw her. She was wedged behind the concrete stoop at the base of the porch steps, pressed into the gap between the foundation and the dead shrubs. Her knees were pulled to her chest. She was wearing a pink sweatshirt 2 sizes too big, jeans and sneakers that weren't tied. No coat. Her arms were wrapped around herself so tight her knuckles had gone white. Her hair was loose and tangled. Her eyes were open. She hadn't been sleeping. She'd been waiting. Hawk got off the bike slowly, his boots on the cracked asphalt. Slow, deliberate, like approaching something wild. He crouched at the edge of the sidewalk, 20 feet away. "Emma." She looked at him. Her eyes were enormous in the dark. She didn't move. "It's okay," he said. "I'm not here to take you anywhere." A lie, technically, but the only one that would work. She looked past him at Ree, still straddling his bike at the curb, engine off, not moving. Her gaze came back to Hawk. "You came back," she said. Her voice was barely a sound, scratched thin like she'd been crying or had forgotten how to use it. "Yeah. I waved at you." She paused. "At the other place. Through the window. I saw you. Did you wave back?" "I did." She looked down at her knees, considered this. "I didn't see." "I waved." Another silence. The swing creaked. The tape fluttered. Somewhere in the trees something moved and then didn't. Hawk stayed crouched. His leg was screaming. He didn't shift. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head. "Are you cold?" The slightest hesitation, then another head shake. He unzipped his jacket, held it out to her. She stared at it. Then, with the careful deliberateness of a child who'd learned not to take things too quickly, she reached out and took it, pulled it around her shoulders. It swallowed her whole. She disappeared inside it. Hawk sat down on the curb, not reaching, not moving toward her, just occupying the same cold air. He looked at the taped-up house, the dark windows, the rusted swing set. His breath came out in slow gray clouds. "Why did you come here?" he asked. Emma was quiet for a moment. "Because you're always here." Hawk felt something shift in his chest, something old and calcified cracking loose in a way that wasn't entirely comfortable. He looked at the ground. "Not always. In the mornings." "In the mornings?" "Yeah." She pulled the jacket tighter. "The other place smelled wrong." "The group home?" She nodded. "What did it smell like?" She thought about it. "Like the other places." He didn't ask her to explain. He knew what she meant. Institutional bleach and microwaved food and too many bodies in too little space and the particular absence of anything that belonged to anyone. He knew that smell. He'd known it in field hospitals and processing centers and base housing and every temporary place that never became real. Ree climbed off his bike and leaned against it, arms folded, watching the street in both directions without making it look like watching. He'd positioned himself between the house and the road without being asked. Old instinct. Good instinct. Hawk's phone buzzed. Dell again. "Police have a BOLO out on her. She's a minor. You find her, you have to call it in." He read it twice, pocketed the phone. "Emma." He kept his voice level. "I have to make a phone call. Some people are looking for you. Good people." He wasn't sure that was true, but he said it anyway. "They're going to come, and you're going to have to go with them for tonight." Her face closed down. The openness that had been there, fragile, temporary, folded inward like a piece of paper being creased. "No. I know. I don't want to go back. I know. They don't know me there. I know that too." Her voice was very small and very clear. "You know me." Hawk's throat tightened so fast it nearly stopped him. He breathed through it. "Yeah, I do." "Then why can't I stay with you?" He didn't have an answer for that. Not one the law would accept. Not one that fit inside the rules of a system he'd been fighting for a week and losing for 20 years. He sat with the question for a moment, turning it over, feeling the weight of it. "I'm trying to make that happen," he said finally. She looked at him sideways, skeptical in the way only a 6-year-old who'd been disappointed 100 times could look. "Trying isn't the same as doing." "No," he said, "it's not. Adults say they're trying a lot. I know. And then they don't. I know. Are you going to be like that?" He looked at her directly. "I'm going to try not to be." She seemed to weigh this. Then she nodded, once, with a gravity that didn't belong to someone her size. She held his jacket out to him. He shook his head. She pulled it back around herself. He called Dell, told him where they were. Dell called it in. The caseworker arrived 17 minutes later. A young woman named Sandra, red-eyed from being woken up, efficient in the brittle way of someone who'd learned to suppress the parts of the job that would otherwise wreck them. She got out of the car with a blanket and a paper cup of hot chocolate that had gotten cold. Emma saw her coming and pressed herself tighter against the foundation. Hawk put his hand on the ground between them. Not a wall, just a presence. "Sandra's going to take you somewhere warm tonight," he said. "Tomorrow, I'm going to make some calls." Emma watched him. "Promise?" The word landed like something thrown. He thought about Polly saying she's not our problem anymore. Thought about Dell saying let them do their job. Thought about the titanium rod in his leg and the 3 men who'd become red mist in a foreign country while he'd lived, and the particular guilt of surviving things other people didn't. "Yeah," he said. "I promise." Sandra wrapped Emma in the blanket. Emma kept Hawk's jacket underneath it. Sandra noticed but didn't say anything. She loaded Emma into the back seat. Emma turned and pressed her palm flat against the window. Hawk raised his hand. 5 fingers. The car pulled away. Ree walked over and stood beside him. Neither of them moved for a while. The swing set creaked. The tape fluttered. The streetlight half a block down flickered once and held. "You made her a promise," Ree said. "Yeah. Can you keep it?" "I don't know." Ree was quiet. Then, "You better find out fast." Hawk turned back toward his bike. His leg felt like it had gravel in the joint. His hands were stiff from the cold. He put on his jacket. Emma had left it neatly folded on the top porch step, which was either the most careful or the most heartbreaking thing he'd ever seen a child do. He didn't decide between those 2 options. He just rode. The next 3 days moved like concrete. Hawk filed paperwork at Family Services and was told to wait. He called the placement review board and was transferred 4 times before he reached a voicemail. He called Dell every morning and Dell told him the same thing. "Nothing yet. Sit tight. Don't push too hard or you'll close the door." He called Ree every night and Ree told him, "Still watching, nothing changed. She's at the Missoula group home. She's eating. She's not talking." He went back to work. Showed up at the rail yard every morning and welded and didn't burn anything this time. He rode to the yard alone and he rode home alone and he sat in his kitchen at night with the lights on and a cup of coffee. He let get cold and he stared at the wall and thought about things he couldn't fix. On the 4th day, Polly came to find him. He showed up at the rail yard at end of shift, leaning against the gate in his work gear, arms folded. Hawk saw him from across the lot and felt his jaw set. He walked over. They didn't shake hands. "You talked to Ree," Hawk said. "He told me about the girl, about Maple Street." "And?" Polly's face was complicated. "You made her a promise." "Yeah." "You can't keep it." "You don't know that. The system won't let you. You've got a record. You've got PTSD. You've got no family structure. They're not going to hand a traumatized kid to a single biker with a bad leg and a worse history." "Maybe not." "Not maybe. Definitely." Polly pushed off the gate. "I'm not saying this to hurt you. I'm saying it because you need to hear it from someone who doesn't want to watch you drive yourself into a wall. I appreciate the concern. Don't do that." "Do what?" "That flat voice. That Kandahar voice. I've known you for 9 years. Don't shut me out and call it dignity." Hawk looked at him. The late afternoon light was low and orange, cutting across the rail yard in long shadows. A freight train was moving somewhere behind them. The vibration in the ground, the low horn, the rhythmic thunder of wheels on tracks. "What do you want me to say, Polly?" "I want you to say you understand that this might not work." "I understand that." And I'm going anyway." Polly exhaled hard. "Jesus, Hawk." "She's 6 years old. She ran 2 miles in the cold on her own to find a street she knew, because it was the only street where someone waved at her. You tell me I'm supposed to walk away from that. I'm telling you walking away might be the only thing that keeps you from destroying yourself. Maybe I don't care. Maybe that's the problem." They stood in silence. The train moved through. The vibration faded. "Ree's in," Hawk said. "I know." "You're not." Polly looked at the ground, scraped his boot against the gravel. "I didn't say that." Hawk looked at him. I said I don't think you can win this. Polly's voice was quieter now, tired in a way that went deeper than the shift. I didn't say I was letting you fight it alone. Hawk didn't respond, but something in his posture shifted. Imperceptible to anyone who didn't know him. Polly knew him. First thing tomorrow, Polly said. We talk to Dell. We figure out the legal angle. We do this right, not just loud. All right. And you stop riding alone in the middle of the night. Can't promise that. Try anyway. They rode back to the clubhouse together. Ree was already there, sitting outside on the bench by the door, drinking coffee from a thermos, breath fogging in the cold air. He looked up when they pulled in. Both of you, he said. Both of us, Polly confirmed. Ree nodded slowly. Good. Inside, Dell was waiting. He'd driven up from Missoula without being asked. He was sitting at the bar with a manila folder open in front of him and his cane hooked on the stool beside him. He looked up when they came in, and his face said the news was not good, but it was specific, and specific meant actionable. Sit down, Dell said. They sat. Dell pushed the folder toward Hawk. Inside was a stack of printed documents, placement records, incident reports, a photograph, grainy, taken from a distance, of a man Hawk didn't recognize standing outside the group home in Missoula, talking to the facility director. Who is that? Hawk asked. His name is Gerald Hoyt. He's a private placement coordinator, works with foster families in 4 counties. He's the one who moved Emma out of the temporary home after 48 hours. Why? That's the question. Dell tapped the photo. The temporary family said Emma was too traumatized, that they couldn't handle her, but I talked to the wife separately without her husband present. She told me Emma was fine, quiet, but fine. She said she was starting to trust them. So why'd they request the move? They didn't. The husband made the call after Gerald Hoyt visited the house. Hawk felt the room shift slightly. The way a landscape shifts when you realize the path you've been following goes somewhere you didn't plan. What was Hoyt doing there? Official reason was a routine check-in. He does them for all placements he coordinates. Dell's voice went flat. Unofficial reason is what I've been trying to confirm for 2 days. Tell me. Hoyt's got a pattern. He moves kids. A lot. More than the average for his case volume. Kids come into his placements, stay a few weeks, and then get moved on, usually to group homes or residential facilities, not back into family placements. Why would he do that, Ree asked. Because group homes and residential facilities pay higher placement fees, and Hoyt gets a coordination cut. Dell let that land. He's been doing it for 11 years. The state's never audited him because his paperwork's clean and his numbers are high. High throughput, they call it. Efficient. Polly said very quietly, he's trafficking kids through the system. Not trafficking, not technically. Nothing illegal on its face. But he's deliberately destabilizing placements to generate revenue. And the kids who cycle through his cases. Dell flipped to the last page in the folder. A list of names. 12 children, maybe more. Ages ranging from 4 to 14. Most of them are still in the system. Multiple moves, multiple group home placements, long-term institutional stays. These are kids who came in with minor trauma and got churned until they had major trauma. The room was silent. Hawk looked at Emma's name on the list. 4th one down, 6 years old, 4th placement. His jaw was so tight it ached. Can you prove it? He asked. I can prove the pattern. I can prove the financial connection. I can't prove intent. Dell closed the folder. But I know someone who might be able to fill in the gaps. Who? A former caseworker named Vega. She filed an internal complaint against Hoyt 2 years ago. Got reassigned. Took a job in private social work. I think she'll talk if someone asks the right way. Where is she? Butte? Hawk looked at Ree. Ree looked back. I'll go tomorrow, Hawk said. We'll go tomorrow, Ree corrected. Dell pulled the folder back. I need to say something and I need you to hear it. Hawk waited. What I'm describing, what Hoyt's doing, it touches a lot of people, caseworkers, administrators, county officials who've been rubber stamping his numbers for years. If you start pulling on this, it's not just him who gets exposed, it's the whole network. And networks don't go down quietly. Meaning people in this network have resources, legal resources, political resources. If they figure out someone's coming for them, they'll come back first. Dell's eyes were steady. You're not just fighting a broken system anymore. You're fighting people who profit from the system being broken. Hawk said nothing. He stared at Emma's name on the list, at the number 4 in the placements column, at the small clinical notation that read, current status, temporary group placement, pending review. She's been moved 4 times, Hawk said. In 3 years, Dell confirmed. She's 6. Yeah. She's been in a broken machine since she was 3 years old, and nobody, not one person in the whole state, noticed. Hawk's voice was very quiet, very steady. The Kandahar voice, Polly had called it. The voice that meant he was past the point of feeling and into the point of deciding. Except us. Dell looked at him for a long moment. Don't do anything that puts you in a cell. I'll try. That's not reassuring. It's what I've got. Dell stood, gathered his folder, tucked it under his arm. He picked up his cane, stopped at the door. She asked about you, by the way. Emma. When the caseworker checked in this morning, Emma asked if the man with the bike was going to come back. Hawk's hands were very still on the bar. What did they tell her? Polly asked. They told her they didn't know. Dell pushed through the door. The cold air rushed in for a second, then the door swung shut. No one spoke for a while. The wood stove popped and cracked. The overhead light flickered. Outside, the wind moved through the parking lot, and the bike sat there in the dark, chrome dull under the cloud cover, engines cold. Polly put both hands flat on the bar and looked at them. Okay, he said. So we're going to war with a man who's been corrupting the foster system for 11 years, who has financial ties to people with real power, who will absolutely come after us when he figures out we're looking. He paused. Is that where we are? Yeah, Hawk said. And you want to do this for one kid? I want to do it for all of them, but I'm starting with one. Polly nodded, slow, like a man walking to the edge of something and deciding to step off. All right, but we do this smart. Ree goes to Butte with you. I'll stay here and manage the club, keep things quiet. If Rourke's Kalispell chapter is still willing, I'll reach out. We might need numbers. Don't pull anyone in until we know what we're dealing with, Hawk said. Agreed. Ree cracked his knuckles. What time are we leaving? Sunup. I'll be outside. Hawk stayed after the other 2 left. He sat alone in the clubhouse for a long time. He opened his phone and looked at the photo Dell had shown him. Gerald Hoyt, 50s, ordinary face. The kind of face that didn't register. Gray hair, reading glasses on a lanyard. He looked like someone's accountant, someone's neighbor, someone you'd see at a school board meeting and forget about before you reached the parking lot. 11 years, hundreds of children, a whole machinery of damage wrapped in clean paperwork and high throughput, and the kind of bureaucratic invisibility that comes from giving administrators exactly the numbers they need to not ask questions. Hawk had seen this before, not in social services, but in the military. Men who operated in the space between orders, not breaking rules, just bending the context around the rules until the rules meant something different than they were supposed to mean. Men who were competent and careful and utterly without conscience. He knew exactly how dangerous those men were. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. He stared at it. 3 words. Back off. Now. He looked at the text for a long time. His thumb hovered over the reply button. Then he forwarded it to Dell and put the phone in his pocket. He zipped his jacket. Walked outside. The cold was absolute now. The kind that pressed in from all directions, that made the air feel like something solid you were moving through. He stood beside his bike and looked up at the sky. No stars, just cloud cover and darkness, and the distant glow of the highway. He thought about Emma pressing her palm against the van window. He thought about the swing set with the missing seat and the creak of metal in the wind. He thought about 3 men in Kandahar who hadn't made it home, and the particular way guilt lives in a body. Not in the chest where people think it lives, but in the joints, in the bones, in the place where a titanium rod replaced something real. He thought about a 6-year-old girl who ran 2 miles alone in the dark to find a street where someone had once waved at her. He kicked the bike to life. The engine roared. Exhaust bloomed white in the cold. He sat there for a moment, not moving, just letting the machine vibrate under him, letting the noise drown out everything else. Then his phone buzzed again. Same unknown number. This time it wasn't 3 words. It was a photograph. Emma Rose Bennett, inside the group home, sitting on a cot, unaware she was being watched. Someone was already inside. Someone who wanted him to know they could reach her before he... The photograph didn't shake. Hawk's hand shook. The phone stayed perfectly still in his grip while everything else, his breathing, his vision, the ground under his boots, tilted sideways. Emma, sitting on a cot in the group home, shot through a window, close enough that whoever took it had been standing on the property, close enough that they could have reached through the glass. He called Dell. 3 rings. "Someone's inside this group home," Hawk said. "They sent me a photo of Emma. Right now. Tonight." Dell's voice went from sleep rough to sharp in one breath. "Forward it to me." "Already did." "Don't move. Don't go to that facility. If you show up there tonight, they'll arrest you and she'll be completely unprotected." "Then what do I do?" "You let me call the Missoula PD and report a possible threat to a minor in state custody." "The same cops who ran me off the street this afternoon." "I know. Do it anyway." Hawk hung up. He stared at the photo one more time. Emma's profile, her shoulders, the way she was sitting, knees together, hands in her lap, posture of someone who had learned to take up as little space as possible. She was looking at the wall. She had no idea anyone was watching. He called Ree. "Get back here." "What happened?" "Someone's watching Emma. They sent me a photo to let me know they can touch her." A pause. Then the sound of keys. 10 minutes. He called Polly. Same message. Same response. He stood in the parking lot and waited, engine off, the cold wrapping around him like something alive. The unknown number didn't text again. The silence was worse. Ree arrived in 8 minutes, Polly in 11. They stood around Hawk's bike in the dark, and Hawk showed them the photo without explaining it. He watched their faces. Ree's jaw set like poured concrete. Polly went pale under the parking lot light. "Hoyt," Polly said, "has to be. He knows we're coming." "Yeah." "How?" Hawk thought about the filing at Family Services, the calls to the Placement Review Board, Dell asking questions around the system for 4 days. Any one of those threads led back to someone who knew Hoyt, who owed Hoyt, who was afraid of Hoyt. "We weren't quiet enough," Hawk said. Ree's voice was flat. "So he moves first. He's warning us off." "Are you warned?" Hawk looked at him. "What do you think?" The 3 of them stood in silence for a moment. The wind cut across the parking lot and set the pine trees moving. Somewhere on the highway, a truck's horn sounded. Long, fading, gone. "We go to Butte tonight," Hawk said. "Not tomorrow. Tonight." "Vega," Ree said. "She's the only one who can give us what we need fast enough to matter." Polly pulled out his phone. "I'll get the address." They rode through the dark and tight formation, 3 bikes, no headlights on the back roads until they hit the highway. Butte was 90 miles south, an hour and 20 minutes in normal conditions. They made it in 58. The city sat in a bowl of hills, lit from below by streetlights and the glow of old industry, the kind of place that looked like it had been built hard and used harder. They found Vega's address in a neighborhood of small houses with chain-link fences and porch lights that stayed on all night. Hawk knocked. Ree stood at the corner of the porch. Polly stayed with the bikes at the curb, watching the street. A light came on inside. A shadow crossed the window. The door opened on a chain. A woman's face, 40s, dark hair shot through with gray, eyes that assessed and calculated before the door was even fully open. She looked at Hawk, at the patch on his vest, at the bike at the curb. "You're the biker," she said. "Dell called me." "He call you tonight?" 20 minutes ago. Said someone might come." She looked past him at Ree. "He didn't say 2. "Is that a problem?" She unchained the door. "Come in, both of you." The house was small and clean and full of file boxes. Cardboard boxes stacked against every wall, labeled in black marker with dates and case numbers. Hawk counted 14 of them in the front room alone. Vega moved through them like they were furniture she'd stopped seeing. She sat them down at a kitchen table with 3 mugs of coffee she poured without asking. She stood across from them with her arms folded and her eyes moving between their faces. "How much did Dell tell you?" Hawk asked. "Enough." "Hoyt, the pattern, the financial angle. We need more than pattern. We need proof of intent." Vega looked at him for a long moment. Something moved across her face. Calculation. And beneath it, something older. Fear that had been sitting so long it had become structural, load-bearing. I filed a complaint 2 years ago, she said. Got buried. I got reassigned to a desk in a building with no windows and case files from 2009. Message received. What was in the complaint? She went to one of the boxes, found a manila folder without having to search, set it on the table. Hawk opened it. Inside was a spreadsheet, handwritten, then photographed. Columns of names, dates, placement IDs, and in the far right column, amounts. Dollar figures ranging from 400 to 2,000, each one annotated with a set of initials. What are the initials? Ree asked. The recipients, Vega said. When Hoyt moves a child to a group facility, the coordination fee gets paid. Part of it goes to Hoyt. Part of it gets distributed. She tapped the initials column. These are county administrators, a family court clerk, 2 caseworkers in the Missoula office. She paused. And one more. Hawk looked at her. Who? She turned to the last page of the folder, a name circled in red pen. Hawk read it again. His stomach went cold. The name was Thomas Carver, Dell's son. Ree saw it the same moment. His head came up slowly. He looked at Hawk. The look said everything and asked the same question Hawk was already turning over. How long had Dell known, and what had he been steering them away from? Or toward? Carver, Hawk said. His voice was careful, controlled. Thomas Carver. Dell Carver's son, yes, Vega said. She said it like she'd been waiting to say it for 2 years, like the weight of the unsaid had worn grooves in her. He's a family court intake coordinator. He processes emergency placement requests. He's been flagging certain kids with no family advocates, no attorneys, nobody watching, and routing them to Hoyt's pipeline. Dell hired me, Hawk said. Dell brought me into this. I know. He told me to file paperwork. He told me to make calls. Every move I made left a trail that led back to his son, Vega said. Yes. The kitchen was very quiet. The refrigerator hummed. Outside, a dog barked twice and went still. Hawk's coffee sat untouched. A thin wisp of steam rose from it and dissolved into nothing. He thought about every conversation. Dell's advice to go through official channels. Dell's insistence on calling it in. Dell's careful steering, not blocking him. Never blocking him. Just guiding. Just making sure that when everything came apart, Hawk was holding the most visible piece. He played me, Hawk said. Vega's voice was not unkind. I think he's afraid of his son going to prison. So he let Emma stay in danger. She didn't answer. That was answer enough. Ree put both hands flat on the table. The photo tonight. The threat. Hoyt, Hawk said. But Dell tipped him off. Had to. Then Dell knows we're here. The 3 of them looked at each other. Hawk stood, went to the window, looked out at the street. Polly was still at the curb. The street was quiet. Nothing moving. Nothing he could see. How solid is this? Hawk asked, still looking at the window. Solid enough for a federal complaint, Vega said. Not solid enough for a quick arrest. Not without someone inside the system pushing it up. Who would push it? She hesitated. There's a state investigator, a woman named Reyes. She's been looking at Hoyt independently for 8 months. She hit the same walls I did, but she hasn't stopped. She's clean. I checked. But she needs a primary witness, someone willing to go on record. You, Hawk said. Vega's arms tightened across her chest. I have a daughter. Emma has no one. The silence between those 2 sentences was the most honest thing in the room. Vega looked at the file boxes on her walls. At 14 boxes of evidence she'd been living with for 2 years, carrying from apartment to apartment, unable to let go and unable to move forward. Her jaw worked. If I go on record, she said quietly, and this doesn't stick, I'll make it stick, Hawk said. You can't promise that. I know. He turned from the window. His face was not reassuring. It was not warm. It was the face of a man who had stopped calculating odds and started calculating costs. But I'm going to make that call to Reyes tonight, and I need you to be ready when she calls back. Vega looked at him for a long time. Then she nodded. Hawk pulled out his phone. His thumb was on the screen when Polly's voice came through the door. Not a knock, Not a call, just his voice, low and urgent. Hawk, outside. Now. Hawk was through the door in 2 steps. Polly was standing on the porch, pointing down the street. Hawk followed the line of his arm. 3 black SUVs. Parked. Lights off. Engine exhaust rising in the cold. They've been there 4 minutes, Polly said. Didn't move. Didn't get out. Hawk looked at them. Looked at his phone. Looked at the door behind him, where Vega stood with 14 boxes of evidence and a daughter she was afraid for. Inside his pocket, the unknown number buzzed again. 1 word this time. Last chance. Hawk put the phone back in his pocket without replying. He looked at Ree, who had come out behind him and was already reading the situation with the flat professional calm of a man who had stood in worse places than this. We can't run, Ree said. No. And we can't fight 3 SUVs on a residential street. No. So what do we do? Hawk looked at the door, at Vega, at the boxes, at the street, at the 3 silent vehicles and the exhaust rising from engines that had not been. The exhaust from the 3 SUVs kept rising, patient, unhurried, the kind of patience that came from knowing you had more resources than the people you were watching. Hawk made the decision in 4 seconds. Polly, take Vega's files, everything in those boxes, load them on your bike. He turned to Vega in the doorway. You have a car? In the back. Keys. She disappeared inside. Back in 30 seconds. Threw him the keys. Honda Civic, 10 years old, a dent in the rear quarter panel. He caught them without looking. You ride with Polly, Hawk said. He takes you north on the 91, not the highway. Back roads. You call Reyes right now while you're moving. You tell her everything. You tell her you have the files. Vega's face was pale, but her voice was steady. What about you? We keep them looking at us. Ree was already at his bike, pulling a burner phone from his saddlebag, the kind every rider with operational instincts carried and never explained. He tossed it to Hawk. In case they're tracking your primary. Hawk pocketed it. The SUVs still hadn't moved, still watching, waiting to see what the bikers would do. That was the tell. They weren't here to grab anyone yet. They were here to intimidate, to count heads, to confirm Vega was compromised, which meant Hawk still had a window, maybe 3 minutes, maybe 5, before someone on the other end of a radio decided waiting was done. Go, Hawk said to Polly. Polly grabbed the first 2 boxes from inside, came back for 2 more. Vega carried 3 herself, moving fast, efficient, the way people moved when fear finally converted to action. They loaded the Civic's trunk through the back gate. Polly's bike went out the alley behind the house, Vega in the Civic behind him, lights off until they hit the cross street. Gone. Hawk walked back to his bike. Ree flanked him on the left. The 2 of them stood in the cold streetlight and looked at the SUVs. 3 of them. Hawk counted exhaust columns. 3 engines running. Could be 2 men per vehicle. Could be 4. Could be anyone from private security to county officials to someone Hoyt paid in cash to not ask questions. We ride at them, Ree said. Yeah. Not fast. No? Slow. They kicked their engines to life simultaneously. The sound was enormous in the residential quiet. 2 Harleys in a sleeping neighborhood at 2 in the morning, that low, thunderous idle that was less a sound than a physical pressure against the chest. Hawk felt it in his ribs, in the rod in his leg, in his back teeth. They rolled forward, slow, deliberate, side by side down the center of the street, aimed directly at the middle SUV. At 30 feet, the SUV's headlights came on. High beams. Blinding. Hawk squinted into them and kept rolling. At 20 feet, the driver's door opened. A man got out. Big, 6'2", maybe more. Dark coat. He put his hand up like a traffic cop. Stop right there. Hawk stopped, engine at idle, shaking through the frame into his hands. You need to go home, the man said. Hawk looked at him over the headlight glare. Who are you? Someone giving you good advice. You got a name? No. You got a badge? A pause. No? Then you're just a man standing in the road. The man's hand moved toward his coat. Hawk watched it. The hand stopped, resting against the fabric. Not drawing, just reminding. The woman in that house, the man said. She needs to stay quiet. She already left. The man looked at the house, at the dark windows, the open back gate visible at the side. His jaw tightened. The files too, Hawk said. The man turned back. His face had changed. The professional neutrality was gone. What replaced it was something colder. You have no idea what you've done. I've got a pretty good idea. These people, the people you're moving against, they have reach you cannot imagine. They will dismantle your club. They will audit every member. They will find violations, real or manufactured, and they will use them. You will lose your jobs, your bikes, your freedom, all of it. I've lost things before. Not like this. Hawk revved his engine once. Short, sharp. A period at the end of a sentence. Get out of the road. The man stood there for 3 full seconds. Then he got back in the SUV. The 3 vehicles pulled out. No speed, no drama. Just gone. Taillights fading around the corner. Exhaust hanging in the air where they'd been parked. Re-exhaled. That's not over. No. They're going to move on Emma. Hawk was already on the burner phone, dialing the number Dell had given him for the state investigator. Reyes answered on the second ring, which meant Vega had already called. I know who you are, Reyes said. Her voice was controlled and precise. I've been watching Hoyt for 8 months. Tell me what you have. Vega's coming to you with 14 boxes of documentation, financial records, a payment distribution list with names, including a name inside the system. Thomas Carver. She already knew. Hawk felt something tighten in his chest. How long have you known? 6 weeks. I couldn't move without a primary witness and physical documentation. A pause. Now I have both. Hoyt knows we're coming. He's got people watching Emma at the group home in Missoula. I know, I have 2 investigators at that facility right now. Emma Rose Bennett is secure. Hawk's breath left him in one long, uncontrolled exhale. He hadn't realized how much of his body had been clenched around that single unknown until it wasn't unknown anymore. But I need you to understand something, Reyes continued. When I move on Hoyt, it happens fast and it happens completely. Everyone on that list gets picked up simultaneously, including Thomas Carver, including anyone who helped steer this investigation. She let that land. Including Del Carver, if his role becomes evidenced. I understand. Do you? Because Del Carver brought you into this. I know what he did. And it doesn't change what Emma needs. Another pause, longer this time. I'll move by morning. I need you to do one thing. What? Stay out of Missoula tonight. Do not go near that facility. If you show up there and Hoyt's people are watching, they'll know the net is closing and someone will run. I need everyone in place. Every instinct Hawk had screamed against it. The image of Emma on that cot, the window, the unknown photographer, the 3 SUVs, the man with his hand against his coat. Every piece of it said, move, now, go. He made himself stay still. All right, he said. He hung up. Looked at Ree. Well, Ree said. We wait. Ree looked at him, at his hands, at the way he was gripping the handlebars. Can you do that? Hawk didn't answer. They rode back toward Hollow Creek, slower now, the highway dark and empty, the pine trees moving in the wind on both sides. Hawk rode and didn't think, or tried not to. The engine filled his head with white noise, and he let it. His primary phone buzzed at mile 40. The unknown number again. Not a text this time, a call. He answered it. You made a mistake. The voice was different, not the man from the street, older, controlled, accustomed to being the last word on everything. You involved a state investigator. Hoyt. She was already involved, Hawk said. Not like this. You accelerated a timeline that could have been managed. A pause. Things that could have been managed quietly are now going to become very loud, and loud things hurt people who don't deserve to be hurt. Like Emma. I'm not threatening the child. Then what are you threatening? I'm telling you that systems in motion are hard to stop, that people who get caught in them, children, workers, families, pay prices they didn't anticipate. His voice was almost gentle, almost reasonable. The voice of a man who had spent 11 years explaining to himself why what he did was practical rather than monstrous. Walk away. Tonight. Let this resolve through proper channels. I will ensure the child is placed safely. You have my word. Hawk thought about 14 boxes of files, about names in a column, about Thomas Carver routing children like cargo, about a 6-year-old running 2 miles alone in the cold to stand on a street where someone had once waved at her. Your word, Hawk said. Yes. The same word you gave every kid you cycled through your pipeline. Silence. You have until sunrise, Hoyt said. After that, I can't control what happens. The line went dead. Hawk pocketed the phone. His hands on the bars were very steady. His chest was not. He was 20 miles from Hollow Creek when he saw the lights in his mirror. 1 bike coming up fast from behind. Then 2. Then 5. He recognized the sound before he recognized the headlights. Iron Valley Riders. Rourke's Kalispell chapter mixed with their own. He counted 11 bikes by the time they caught up and pulled alongside. Rourke came up on Hawk's left, pulled off his helmet, shouted over the engines. Paulie called. We're in. Hawk looked at him. You know what this is? Dirty system, dirty money, kid in the middle. Rourke's pale eyes were flat and certain. Yeah, we know. Could get ugly. Already ugly. Hawk looked at the line of riders flanking him on both sides. Men he knew and men he didn't. Welders and freight workers and veterans and mechanics and men who had been failed by every institution they'd ever approached and had built something out of road and engine and loyalty instead. His phone buzzed one more time. Reyes. A text. Hoyt's moving. He's not waiting for sunrise. He's going for Vega. Now. Then a second text, 3 seconds later. He has a judge. Emergency order. He's going to have the files declared stolen property and Vega detained before morning. You have maybe 40 minutes. Hawk read it twice. Then he opened the text thread and typed back. What do you need? Reyes, get Vega to the federal building in Helena. If she walks through that door with those files before Hoyt's order processes, it goes federal. He loses jurisdiction. Everything. Hawk. How far is she? Reyes. 60 miles. Paulie's with her, but Hoyt has people on the 91. Hawk stared at the highway ahead of him. 60 miles. People on the road between Vega and the only door that mattered. 14 boxes of evidence on a civilian's back seat. A woman with a daughter trying to do the right thing after 2 years of being too afraid. He looked at Rourke. How fast can these bikes go? Rourke almost smiled. Faster than whatever's on the 91. Hawk opened the throttle. The convoy surged forward. 13 bikes in tight formation, engines screaming into the Montana dark, the sound of them rolling across the hills like something ancient and unstoppable, chrome, catching the moon in flashes, exhaust burning white behind them. Hawk leaned into the speed and let the cold tear at his face and didn't think about the titanium in his leg or the judge signing a paper in a warm office, or Del Carver sitting somewhere with the weight of what he'd done finally settling into him like the shrapnel it was. He thought about Emma pressing her palm against the glass. He thought about 40 minutes. He rode. At mile 11, Paulie's number lit up the burner phone. Hawk answered without slowing. The wind made it almost impossible to hear. Paulie's voice, tight and clipped. 2 vehicles, black. They're pacing us. Been on us for 6 miles. I don't know if they're going to stop us or just... The line crackled. Static. Then Paulie's voice again, lower, different in register. Hawk. There. Paulie's voice cut out mid-sentence, and the static held for 2 full seconds that felt like falling. Hawk had the burner pressed to his ear, wind tearing at everything, the engine roaring under him, the convoy stretched behind him across a mile of dark highway. Paulie, talk to me. Nothing. Then, ran us off the shoulder. Vega's okay, car's okay, but they stopped in front of us. 3 of them. Out of the vehicles. How many men? 5, maybe 6. I can't... A sound. Hard and percussive. Not a gunshot. Something hitting metal. They're trying to get to the trunk. Hold the line, 12 minutes. Hawk dropped the phone into his jacket pocket without hanging up. He looked at Rourke riding to his left, held up 2 fingers, pointed forward, dropped his hand flat. The old convoy signal for split and flank. Rourke read it without hesitation. He peeled left, taking 5 bikes with him onto the access road that ran parallel to the 91. Hawk kept 6 bikes on the highway, opened the throttle to the stop, and leaned into the dark. The cold at that speed was not weather anymore. It was physics. It hit every exposed surface and tried to peel it back. His eyes watered behind the visor. The rod in his leg vibrated against the frame and sent shooting pain up through his hip and into his lower back with every imperfection in the asphalt. He breathed through it and rode. He saw the situation from 300 yards out. The Civic angled onto the shoulder, 2 wheels in the gravel, headlights still on. Paulie's bike beside it. Paulie standing in front of Vega with his arms out and his feet planted. 3 black vehicles forming a loose arc across the road. 5 men between the bikes and the car. One of them had the trunk open and was pulling boxes. Hawk hit his high beams and his horn simultaneously. The effect was immediate. 5 men turned. The one at the trunk dropped a box. Hawk felt the 6 riders behind him do the same. High beams up, horns, a wall of light and sound coming down the highway at speed. 1,300 pounds of steel per bike, 6 bikes. The math of it plain to anyone standing in the road. The men scattered, not running, moving, tactical, back toward their vehicles. Hawk braked hard at 50 yards and the convoy folded in behind him, bikes spreading across the road in a loose line, engines at idle, headlights trained on the 3 black vehicles like interrogation lights. Rourke's group came off the access road from the left flank at the same moment. The geometry closed. 13 bikes surrounding 3 vehicles on an empty Montana highway in the dark, engines idling, no one speaking, the cold making everything sharp and clear and very real. One of the men held his ground. Gray coat. He looked at Hawk across the headlight line and his expression said he was calculating, running numbers, deciding if this was still manageable. Hawk got off his bike, walked forward, his legs screamed. He didn't slow. He stopped 10 feet from the man, close enough to see his face clearly. Step away from the car. The man looked past him at the line of bikes, at Rourke's flanking group, at Paulie still standing in front of Vega with his arms out. He looked back at Hawk. "You're making this worse," the man said. "The files are going to Helena, tonight. You can stand here or you can go home." Hawk's voice was very quiet, not threatening, just certain. "But you're not stopping that car." The man held his ground for 4 seconds. 5. Then he stepped aside. The others followed. They got back into their vehicles. The 3 SUVs sat there for a moment. Engines running, headlights on, decision hanging in the cold air. And then one pulled forward, the others followed, and they drove north and kept driving until their taillights were gone. Paulie exhaled so hard his whole body deflated. He turned to Vega. "You okay?" She was holding one of the boxes against her chest like it was something she was afraid to drop. Her face was white and her hands were shaking, but her jaw was set. "I'm okay." "Good." Paulie looked at Hawk. "Now can we please get this woman to Helena before I have a cardiac event?" The convoy reformed. 6 bikes flanking the Civic. Rourke's group running sweep behind. Paulie rode point. They moved at a pace the Civic could hold, no faster, through the dark and the cold and the remaining 40 miles of Montana highway between them and a federal building with its lights on and a state investigator named Reyes waiting at the door. They arrived at 4:47 a.m. Reyes was exactly what her voice had suggested. 50s, compact, with close-cropped hair and the particular stillness of someone who had been angry for a long time and learned to convert it into precision. She came down the steps herself when the Civic pulled up. She looked at the 14 boxes in the trunk, and she looked at Vega and she said, "You have no idea how long I've been waiting for these." 2 years, Vega said. 8 months for me, but yes. Reyes looked at Hawk. "You're Brennan." "Yeah." "You've caused an enormous amount of chaos in the last 48 hours. Is that a problem?" "No, it's exactly what this needed." She looked at the convoy behind him. 13 bikes, engines off now, riders standing beside them in the pre-dawn dark, breath fogging, watching. "Are these men going to be a liability?" "No." "Good, because what happens next is going to be complicated and I need it clean." She picked up the first box herself. "Get inside, all of you. I have coffee." The coffee was bad. Hawk drank 3 cups. By 6 a.m., Reyes had a federal assistant on the phone. By 7, The documentation had been formally received and cataloged as evidence in an active federal investigation. By 8:15, Gerald Hoyt's emergency order had been challenged and suspended by a federal magistrate in 37 minutes, which Reyes said was almost certainly a record. Hawk sat in a plastic chair in a federal building hallway and felt the adrenaline leave his body like water draining from a bathtub. It left behind everything the adrenaline had been covering. The pain in his leg was considerable. His hands had developed a fine tremor he couldn't entirely control. His eyes burned. His back felt like it had been worked over with something heavy. Ree sat down beside him, said nothing, handed him a bottle of water. Hawk drank it. "Hoyt?" he asked. "Reyes has enough for an immediate arrest warrant. She's moving this morning." Ree leaned back. "Thomas Carver, too." "Dell?" Ree was quiet for a moment. "Dell called Reyes an hour ago, turned himself in, gave a full statement." Hawk looked at the ceiling. The fluorescent lights hummed. Somewhere in the building, a printer was running. Somewhere on a Montana highway, the sun was coming up over the pine ridges. "He was trying to protect his son," Hawk said. "Yeah." Instead, he protected the man his son was working for. "Yeah." Hawk set the empty water bottle on the floor. "Is Thomas Carver going to prison?" "Reyes thinks so. Dell, too, probably. Obstruction at minimum." Ree rubbed his face. "Dell's the one who called you in the first place. You think he knew what he was doing?" "I think he thought he could control it. Thought he could keep his son out of the line of fire by steering me toward Hoyt and away from the financial records." Hawk shook his head. "Didn't account for Vega." "Nobody accounts for the person who's been sitting on the evidence for 2 years waiting for someone worth handing it to." They sat in silence for a while. Polly came down the hallway, coffee in hand, looking like a man who had been awake for 22 hours and was running on nothing but stubbornness. He dropped into the chair on Hawk's other side and said nothing for a full minute. Then, "She's safe?" Hawk knew who he meant. "Reyes says her investigators have been at the group home since midnight. Emma's fine." Polly nodded. "What happens to her now?" "The placement review gets reopened. Hoyt's entire case portfolio gets audited. Every child he's cycled through the system in 11 years gets a fresh assessment." Hawk paused. "Emma's file goes to the top." "That's not an answer." "No, it's not." Polly drank his coffee. "You filed the foster intent paperwork." "Yeah." "They're going to say no." "Probably." "Single biker, PTSD, bad leg, no family structure." "I know what I look like on paper." "So what are you going to do?" Hawk was quiet for a long moment. The printer somewhere in the building stopped running. The hallway was very still. "I'm going to show them I'm something different in person." Polly turned and looked at him. Really looked at him. The way you looked at someone when you were trying to figure out if they'd changed or if you'd just stopped seeing them clearly. "When did you decide that?" "Maple Street. First morning she wasn't there." Polly nodded slowly. "All right." "All right what?" "All right, I'll write you a character reference. Ree too, probably. Rourke if you want him." Polly looked at his coffee. 47 bikers telling a foster board you're a decent human being. That's got to count for something." Hawk almost said something, stopped, looked at the floor. "Don't," Polly said. "Don't what?" "Don't get sentimental. It's embarrassing." Hawk's mouth moved, not quite a smile, close enough. The arrest happened that morning. Reyes moved fast and moved complete, the way she'd promised. Simultaneous, coordinated, no gaps for anyone to run. Gerald Hoyt was taken from his home in Missoula at 9:03 a.m. Thomas Carver was picked up at the family court building at 9:07, still at his desk, still processing paperwork. 2 caseworkers in the Missoula office were suspended pending investigation. The family court clerk was arrested at a gas station 30 miles east of town, which Reyes said suggested he'd been tipped and hadn't gotten far enough. Del Carver surrendered voluntarily at the Helena Federal Building at 8 a.m., 45 minutes before the warrants processed. He came alone, without a lawyer, and gave a statement that Reyes described as thorough and unreserved. He named every payment, every conversation, every moment he'd chosen his son over his conscience. He was 62 years old and he looked, Reyes said, like a man who had been carrying something for a very long time and had finally put it down, even though putting it down meant the floor gave way. Hawk never saw him again. He thought about calling, decided against it, not out of anger, out of the understanding that some things didn't have a conversation that made them better. Dell had tried to protect his son by steering a damaged man toward a dangerous situation and hoping for the best. It hadn't worked. The consequences were real. The silence between them could be too. The placement review for Emma Rose Bennett was reopened within 72 hours of Hoyt's arrest. It took 3 weeks for the state to audit her file. 3 placements in 3 years under Hoyt's coordination, each move triggered by manufactured instability, each group home billing paid through the pipeline. The caseworker assigned to the review was a woman named Ortega, who had not been in Hoyt's network, and who read Emma's file with the particular focused grimness of someone doing a job they intended to do correctly. Hawk met with Ortega on a Tuesday in November. He drove to Missoula in his truck, no bike, no vest, and sat across from her in a small office with a plant on the windowsill that looked like it had survived conditions it shouldn't have. Ortega looked at his file, looked at him. You were in the military. Yes. Afghanistan. 2 tours. You were medically discharged. Yes. You have a PTSD diagnosis. Yes. Are you in treatment? I started seeing a counselor 2 months ago. She looked up. 2 months ago. As in recently. As in when I realized I'd been pretending I didn't need to for about 5 years. She made a note. The injury. Your leg. Titanium rod. I have full mobility. I work a physical job. You're single. Yes. No romantic partner. No. You live alone. Yes. In a 2-bedroom house. I bought it 8 weeks ago. Before that, I was renting a 1-bedroom. He paused. I was planning ahead. Ortega looked at him for a long time, not unkindly, but with the thoroughness of someone who understood that the paperwork could only tell part of the story, and the rest had to be read in the person sitting across from her. Why this child specifically? Hawk had been waiting for this question since he walked in the door. He'd thought about how to answer it. The honest answer was complicated. It involved a war he couldn't explain, and 3 men he couldn't save, and a pattern he recognized because he'd been living it himself. The particular behavior of someone for whom visibility had become survival. The honest answer involved all of that, and it was long, and it was messy, and it was entirely true. He gave it to her. All of it. He didn't shape it, didn't edit, didn't make himself sound better than he was. He talked for 22 minutes, and she listened, and when he was done, the office was very quiet. Ortega looked at her notebook. She'd stopped writing about 8 minutes in. Mr. Brennan, she said, I've been doing this job for 14 years. In 14 years, I've seen a lot of people who wanted to foster or adopt come through this office. Some of them were genuinely good people. Some of them were motivated by things they didn't entirely understand about themselves. She paused. You're the first person who's ever told me the exact same thing about themselves that I was going to note as a concern in my evaluation. Before I could say it, Hawk held her gaze. Is that good or bad? It's honest. She closed the notebook. I'm going to recommend you for a full home study. That's not an approval. It's a process. 6 weeks minimum. Background check, home inspection, interviews, parenting class. Whatever it takes. It takes a lot. And it may not work. Emma's trauma is significant. She will need specialized support that goes beyond what any single placement can provide. I know. And even after all of this, the board may decide a different placement is more suitable. I know. And you're prepared for that. No, Hawk said, but I'll deal with it if it comes. Ortega almost smiled. It was small, restrained, but it was there. 6 weeks, Mr. Brennan. He drove back to Hollow Creek with the windows down despite the cold. The highway was empty in both directions. The pine trees moved in the wind. The sky was the flat pale blue of late November, the kind of sky that looked clean because it had been scoured by weather. He drove and let the air move through the cab and thought about nothing in particular and everything at once. His phone rang. Ree. How'd it go? Ree asked. 6 weeks? That's a yes? That's a maybe with paperwork. Better than no. Yeah. Ree was quiet for a moment. Then, Rourke's chapter is doing a run this Saturday. He asked if we wanted to join. Just a ride. Nothing else. Yeah, Hawk said. Tell him yeah. The 6 weeks were not easy. The home study involved a caseworker named Briggs, who came to Hawk's house 3 times and asked questions that required him to articulate things he'd spent years not articulating. The parenting class was held in a church basement. The instructor was careful to keep it secular, with 11 other adults ranging from a retired schoolteacher to a 26-year-old single man who reminded Hawk of himself except younger and less damaged, which Hawk found both hopeful and depressing. The background check surfaced 2 things. A bar fight from 11 years ago that resulted in a disorderly conduct charge later expunged, and a noise complaint from the rail yard that had his name attached by mistake and took 4 days to resolve. Neither killed the process. Polly wrote a character reference that was 4 pages long and included phrases like "the only man I'd trust with my daughter's life," and "not a man who does things halfway," including the things that are hard. Ree's reference was 1 page, single paragraph, and said more in 200 words than most people said in 2000. Rourke sent one unprompted on Iron Valley Writer's letterhead, signed by 31 members of the Kalispell chapter. Ortega called Hawk on a Thursday evening in late December. The board approved the placement, she said. Hawk was standing in his kitchen, the 2-bedroom house. The 2nd bedroom had a bed in it now, a real one, with a frame and a dresser, and curtains Polly's wife had helped him pick out because he'd stood in the store for 20 minutes holding 2 different sets of curtains, and Polly had called her because Hawk is drowning in curtains. Please help. When? He asked. January 3rd, pending Emma's final interview. Does she know? She's been told there's a potential permanent placement under review. She hasn't been told your name. Ortega paused. Would you like to be there for her interview? Not in the room, but present. Yes. Then be at our Missoula office at 10 a.m. on the 28th. He was there at 9:15. He sat in the waiting area with a cup of bad coffee and a magazine he didn't read. The waiting area had industrial carpet and plastic chairs and a fish tank in the corner with 3 fish in it, which Hawk counted several times without meaning to. At 10:07, a door opened. Emma came through it with Ortega and a woman Hawk didn't recognize. She was wearing a blue sweater and jeans and shoes that fit. Her hair was in 2 braids that weren't entirely even. She was looking at the floor as she walked, the posture of a child who had learned to survey a room without making eye contact. Then she looked up. She saw Hawk. She stopped walking. The women with her both stepped slightly aside without making a production of it. The room was very quiet. Emma looked at him. Her face went through several things in rapid succession: recognition, disbelief, something fragile and careful. She took 1 step toward him, then another. You came back, she said. Yeah. You said you would. I did. She looked at him for a long time. 6 years old, standing in an office with industrial carpet and a fish tank with 3 fish, having been moved 4 times and failed by every institution designed to protect her. Her eyes were the eyes of a child who had learned that things ended before you were ready, and that the smart move was to not let yourself believe too hard in anything. Hawk stayed where he was. He didn't crouch down, didn't reach for her, just held her gaze and let her decide. She walked over and stood in front of him. She looked up at him the way you looked up at something very tall that you were trying to take the full measure of. Then she reached out and took his hand, both of hers around one of his. His was 3 times the size of hers. Scarred knuckles, calloused palm, a man's hands, worked and rough and not gentle-looking. She held it anyway. Are you going to keep the room? She asked. His throat closed. He worked around it. Yeah, it's yours if you want it. She thought about this with the grave deliberateness she brought to all decisions. Are there curtains? Yeah. What color? Yellow, with little white things on them. I was told they were appropriate. She considered. Yellow is okay. Good. She kept holding his hand. She looked at the fish tank. How many fish are there? 3. I counted 4. Hawk looked. She was right. There were 4. He had missed one in the back corner, half hidden behind a plastic plant. You're right, he said. 4. She nodded, satisfied. Like the world had just passed a small but important test. January 3rd came with 6 inches of new snow and a sky the color of old pewter. Hawk drove to the Missoula group home with Polly in the truck because Polly had insisted on coming and Hawk hadn't argued because he didn't want to. They drove in comfortable silence most of the way. The highway was plowed, but the shoulders were banked high with snow, the pine trees along the ridgeline white heavy and still. Ortega met them at the door. She handed Hawk a folder. Inside was a single document, the placement agreement, a line for his signature at the bottom. He signed it. Emma came out of the building at 10:30 with a backpack and a paper grocery bag with the top folded down. Everything she owned fit in those 2 containers. Hawk took the grocery bag from her without being asked. She let him. They walked to the truck. Polly opened the back door. Emma climbed in and looked at the back seat with the serious attention of someone assessing new terrain. "There's a seatbelt," Polly offered. "I know how seatbelts work," Emma said. Polly looked at Hawk over the roof of the truck. Hawk looked back at him. Polly mouthed something that looked like she's going to be fine. Hawk thought he was probably right. They drove back through the snow. Emma sat in the back and watched Montana go past the window. After a while, she said, "Are there other people?" "What other people?" Hawk asked. "The ones on bikes, the ones who waved." "Yeah, there are other people." "Do they know about me?" "Yeah." She considered this. "Are they going to be around?" "If you want them to be." She went back to watching the window. The snow moved sideways in the wind. The highway curved through the hills, familiar and long, the kind of road that had been here before anyone now living and would be here after. After another mile, she said, "Okay." Just that. "Okay." The verdict of someone who had decided to try. Hawk drove and didn't say anything. Polly looked at the window and managed to keep whatever was happening on his face from becoming anything either of them would have to acknowledge. 2 weeks later, on a Saturday morning in late January, the Iron Valley Riders came through Hollow Creek at 8 a.m. 23 bikes. Not their old route. A new one, longer, looping through the residential streets on the east side of town before hitting the highway. Hawk had mapped it. Polly had spread the word. The convoy rolled past the house at 8:17. Emma was standing on the porch. She was wearing her blue coat, and her shoes were tied. Her breath came out in small clouds in the cold air. She raised both hands. 23 riders waved back. She laughed. It was a short sound, surprised out of her, like she hadn't expected it to feel that good. Hawk, riding third in the formation, heard it from the street. He looked over his shoulder, and she was still waving, arms moving, and she was still laughing, and it was the kind of sound that went somewhere permanent. Not a memory, but a fact, something that had happened in the world and changed it by having happened. He faced forward. The highway opened up ahead of him, straight and white-shouldered and cold and vast. He rode. That spring, Emma started first grade at Hollow Creek Elementary. The teacher, a woman named Mrs. Alcott, called Hawk 3 weeks in to tell him Emma was doing well, reading slightly above level, made 2 friends. Still quiet, still watching, still assessing rooms before she entered them, which Mrs. Alcott said she'd stopped worrying about because it seemed less like anxiety and more like thoroughness. "She told the class her dad rides a motorcycle," Mrs. Alcott said. Hawk held the phone and didn't say anything for a moment. "Mr. Brennan?" "Yeah, I'm here." "I just thought you'd want to know." "Yeah," he said. "Thanks." He sat in his kitchen after he hung up. The house was quiet. It smelled like coffee and, faintly, like the macaroni and cheese he'd made for dinner the night before, which Emma had eaten 2 bowls of and then told him needed more salt, which he'd agreed with. There was a drawing on the refrigerator held up by a magnet shaped like a fish. 4 fish, actually. She'd been specific about the number. Drawn in crayon, yellow and blue, a house with a truck parked outside, and 2 stick figures and 12 very small oval shapes in a line beside them. He looked at the 12 ovals for a while. Motorcycles. She'd drawn 12 of them. The original convoy. The first morning she'd stood on the sidewalk and waved. He got up and poured another cup of coffee and stood at the window and looked at the yard. The snow was gone now. The ground was brown, but there were things coming up at the edges of the fence. He didn't know what they were, hadn't planted anything, but they were there, green and small and insistent, pushing through the cold ground because that was what living things did when they had the space to do it. Somewhere on the highway east of town, he could hear engines, far off. Multiple. The particular low register of Harley-Davidson V-twins on open road, the sound of men who had somewhere to be and were taking the long way to get there. He listened until the sound faded. Then he finished his coffee, rinsed the mug, and went to get Emma from school.